Good morning, afternoon, everyone, and I welcome you guys. I'm Abhishek, and thank you for joining us today. I know many of you are managing IBMI as one of the systems, and modernization is the main agenda. But budget is the first thing that generally comes up in every conversation, and we hear this constantly that IBMI is a remarkable system, decades of business logic, rock solid reliability, still powering some of the most critical operations in the world. But with that, the pressure is also real to modernize faster, improve user experience, reduce cost, all at the same time with the same budget. So today we want to flip that conversation, and it shouldn't be where do we find a new budget, but instead, what if the budget is already there and just that it is allocated differently? Uh, what if savings inside your existing HA infrastructure could fund your entire modernization journey? That's what we are here to explore. And for that very purpose, today I'm joined by Aaron from Rocket Software on HS strategy and iCluster. And with him is Harpreet Singh, bringing the industry modernization perspective. So I welcome you guys. Hey Harpreet,
Thank you.
if may I ask you, what are you seeing on the ground, specifically in the recent times?
Yeah, thank you, Abhishek, and thank you everyone for joining us today for this podcast. And thank you, Ron, for being of help here. So let's start by looking at what we are seeing globally across the IBM I AS400 platforms that customers are using. So they're facing three major challenges. The first one being the skill gap. When we speak about the skill gap, it is related to the seasoned AS400 IBM I professionals are either retiring or are very near to that retirement. So when they're moving out, they're taking away the humongous amount of knowledge that they have gathered over a long period of time. Sometimes some of them maybe decades into the profession. Now, Now, when these people have moved out of the workforce, the new professionals are not taking IBM I as their main skill. They are not interested, or it is tough to find people who have AS400 experience or IBM I experience. So that is the major problem, one of the major problems that the organizations are seeing today. The second one is the need for application modernization. With the skill gap, the modernization is slowing down drastically. It is just more or less keeping the lights on. When enhancements need to be made to the system and the bugs need to be fixed on the system, they take a lot of time. And then there are professionals who used to manage the databases. That is also creating another problem because those professionals have gone. And these green screen systems are error prone. People make mistakes. And then you have to go and fix those mistakes into the system, and you don't have those experts available anymore. So that is another area where there is a lot of problem that organizations are facing. Third is across the board is to reduce the IT spending. And these are not isolated challenges. These are deeply connected. As when the skills are limited, your modernization is going to slow down. When the modernization slows down, your productivity suffers. And when productivity suffers, your cost is running up. When you're not modifying the system, you're not doing application upgrades. And most of these organizations are still running in the green screens, the legacy systems. So the question is not whether to modernize, but how to modernize without disrupting operations. And if possible, how do we do that without increasing the cost? And that's what we need to rethink, how the budget is allocated.
So that's a great point, Harpreet. And also, if we look closely at IBMI environments, a significant portion of the budget is already committed, especially towards high availability and disaster recovery solutions. So, Aaron, if may I bring you in here, where do you commonly see organizations spending the most when it comes to HADR?
Thank you, Abhishek, for having me today. Yeah, good question. I think when we look at how IT budgets are allocated, it becomes clear that high availability and disaster recovery account for a significant portion of that overall IT budget spending. Right? So if you look at the chart on the screen, it's up to 40% in this chart. And for most IBMI organizations, having that ADR solution in place is a must-have. Right? Not only because it's critical for business continuity, and a smart thing to do in general, but also because it helps meet regulatory compliance requirements, such as those mandated by DORA in Europe. So, a quick side note, I'm from Europe, and DORA, the Digital Operation Resilience Act, is a European regulation aimed at ensuring that companies can quickly and effectively recover from disruptions. And given the global growing focus on cyber resilience and business continuity, I expect similar regulatory frameworks to be introduced in other geos over time as well. So, but the challenge I see with, what I would call legacy HADR solutions is that they did not originally consume such a large share of that IT budget. However, many customers have relied on these solutions for years. Tell me that they have experienced sudden or unpredictable pricing increases. And as a result of that, that's where we are now. That portion of the IT budget dedicated to HADR continue to grow year after year up to that 40%. Now, while some of these cost increases might be justified by the addition of new features and capabilities over time, customers, I find, often question the value they are receiving in return. In fact, many tell me that some of these legacy HADR solutions lack an active product roadmap, making it really difficult for them, why those costs continue to rise despite, limited innovation. And that lack of innovation is a significant concern because many of these legacy HADR solutions are very complex to manage and maintain. In some cases, they require daily attention from replication or your IBMI administrators, your specialists, right? And these are the very specialists or experts your organization would rather put on innovation and modernization initiatives that create business value. The complexity of these solutions also makes knowledge transfer challenging. So training new team members to replace those experienced specialists can be difficult, because of that steep learning curve. And then adding to this challenge, some customers are actually reluctant to do that, to reduce their dependency on those specialists, because they just don't have confidence in the support they would receive from their legacy HADR vendor, during a disaster. So, long story short, as a result of all of this, these companies often maintain the status quo, or like how Preet said, just keeping the lights on. They keep spending 40% plus year over year on that HADR solution, and only 7% on innovation, and that's probably going to decline, rather than risk jeopardizing that business continuity that's so important for them.
That's a great insight, Jeroen. Thanks for sharing that, and it's quite enlightening. But the point is, how do we break this cycle? That is, where this discussion should lead us, I suppose. How do we break it?
Well, up to this point, we've talked about the challenges organizations face with legacy HADR solutions, right? So we mentioned the rising costs up to 40%. The complexity, right, and the skills shortage. So it's hard to find people that can maintain or work with that solution. So Rocket iCluster can help here, and here's why I believe why. When it comes to HADR, I think it really comes down to three key areas or components or pillars, if you will. It's simplicity, so it should be easy to use, performance, and automation. So starting with simplicity, one of the most common pieces of feedback I hear from customers is that they just want an HADR solution that's easy to deploy, easy to manage, and easy to understand. Right? And with Rocket iCluster, configuration is straightforward. It's easy to implement and manage. It comes with a very nice web UI. If you want to use that, you don't have to use it, but it comes with a nice web UI, and it really minimizes the need for that your specialized IBMI administrators or the highly specialized replication expertise. You can perform role switch simulations, with confidence, and that allows you to validate, that disaster recovery readiness without disrupting production. So simplicity is one. The second area, and that's a no-brainer, is performance, right? High availability should never come at the expense of application performance. So it should just run in the back, and there should no be impact. And Rocket iCluster is designed to handle really demanding IBM environments with features such as commitment control processing. So to make sure that you have that transactional integrity during replication. Fast replication minimizes recovery point objectives. So while multi-threaded apply processing enables Rocket iCluster to keep pace with high transaction volumes and growing workloads. And with the latest release, customers can even benefit from Power 11 hardware compression. Right? So that enables even faster and more efficient replication with minimal impact on system resources. So simplicity, performance, and the third pillar or area is automation. Right? So it's nice that it's easy to use, but if you don't have to maintain it, it's even better. So many of those legacy HADR environments, require that constant attention I talked about every day from those specialized people. The Rocket iCluster was designed to reduce that operational burden through automation. So it comes with features like automatic remote journal creation, automatic error correction. So if it finds an error, it knows how to resolve it, so you don't have to worry about that. And automating alerting. That helps you free up the specialists from managing that replication solution and allow them to spend more time on strategic initiatives. So this does not only improve efficiency, but also reduces that dependency on that small number of highly skilled experts, right? So because at some point those people will retire, or maybe they don't look to the right or the left if they cross the street. So you really don't want that dependency. So when you put those three pillars together, I just mentioned simplicity, performance, and automation, and you get an HADR solution that's easier to manage and that also frees up resources to focus on innovation rather than infrastructure maintenance.
Right. And the question that is coming to my mind, you mentioned that iCluster can keep pace with high transaction volumes and growing workloads. And I remember from my days as a system administrator a long time back that I spent donkey number of hours a month just managing the resources on the system. So does it do performance tuning as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, the reality is that no IBM environment stands still, right? So new applications, new objects, and libraries are constantly being added, especially if you're developing your application, right? I hope you use a DevOps solution. And over time, that can impact replication performance and increase latency. And that's bad because if the latency increases, then you will lose data if you have to switch to your high availability node. So one of the key advantages of iCluster is that it has an active product roadmap, right, with continuous innovation. I just mentioned, the support for Power 11 hardware compression. That's something we recently added, but we also added an AI-powered performance tuner. And this AI tuner automatically collects and analyzes workload data on your system, right? So it looks at your specific system, your specific environment. And then by looking at the data, it identifies bottlenecks and then workload imbalances, and then provides actionable recommendations to optimize replication performance. So again, this helps you or customers to improve both, your RPO and RTO without requiring that replication expertise or extensive manual tuning.
Tuning.
So that's a tuning. So I just realized, I look at the slides, I mentioned three key areas, right? Simplicity, performance, and automation. But here on the slide, there's another obvious fourth factor, which is price, right? So Rocket offers with iCluster a simple and predictable pricing and licensing. So that really helps you to avoid that unexpected cost increases that's often associated with those legacy solutions. But here's the most important part, right? So customers can achieve up to 50% of cost savings compared to those traditional HA solutions. So this is not just about cost reduction, like you said, Harpreet. This is really about freeing up the budget.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a key shift. We had a power failure in the office, so a glitch.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Glad you
yeah,
have
that's
HMDR in place.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, that's it. That's what I was talking about before we got the light back on. The key shift here is that HA traditionally has been seen as a cost center, but with iCluster, this becomes an opportunity. This is what I understand. Uh, um, and because once you've reduced the cost, now I should not be saying reduce the cost, you have made the budget available. And when you say reduce the cost, it goes back to the bottom line, and we don't want that. We want to hold that money here. So when we've created the budget and you're not asking for more, and the conversation changes, we need more budget for modernization. This goes off completely, and then we have created a budget. And that 7% innovation budget also gets added to the 20% that you've saved in the overall IT budgeting. So total becomes 27%, which is half of 40% of HADR, as we've added, you've shown it here on. So the question now becomes, where should this money be invested in? Now we've freed up 27%, 7% of innovation and 20%. Where should we invest it now?
Yeah, that's $1 million question, Harpreet. And before I answer that question, let me just switch gears for a moment and talk about modernization. I mean, for most organizations, IBMI is not just another platform, right? It's key to them, it's critical for them. It's running the core business applications that have been developed and refined over decades. And these applications contain years of business logic, process knowledge, and investment, right? And in many ways, these applications are part of the what I would call the digital DNA of the organization, and play a key role in what differentiates, the company from its competitors. The challenge, though, is that while the business logic remains incredibly valuable, the user experience often hasn't kept pace with user expectations. And so many of those IBMI applications still rely on traditional green screen interfaces, and today's workforce expects a more modern and intuitive experience. And my customers regularly tell me that onboarding new employees on green screen applications can take up to from 4 to 6 months. And some users become frustrated and leave before they're fully productive, before they even completed the training, right? So, and even after training, they struggle with complex workflows, which leads to slower execution, reduced productivity, and more mistakes. And those mistakes have real business impact, right? Whether it's an incorrect order, a data entry order, or a process exception, every mistake creates additional costs and often impacts customer satisfaction as well. So you can imagine that somebody makes a typo in an order entry application, right, and or copies the wrong thing, and that order is shipped to that customer, then yeah, it's a small mistake. If you find that right away, it's not a big deal. But if that customer receives the wrong order or the wrong parts, that's a lot of that will impact customer satisfaction. So when you add up those costs associated with training, onboarding, lost productivity, that error remediation, then the business case for modernization becomes fairly straightforward, right? So, well, straightforward. You still have to create that business case and quantify the value or outcome, or else management, like you just said, Harpreet, is just going to treat that money you just saved, right, that 20%, as cost savings, and say thank you, and leave that innovation budget at 7%. And that's not what you want. That's exactly where the continuous modernization kit, the CM kit, can help. It helps, Harpreet, to answer your question, where should I invest? So the CM kit provides everything you need, a complete framework to help your organization identify, prioritize, and execute modernization initiatives that will deliver measurable business value and ROI. So if you look at the slide on the right-hand side, there's a little flow diagram. And then starting on the top, of that flow, we have process insights. And process insights observes how users interact with your IBMI applications in real time. So it analyzes usage patterns and creates a heat map showing exactly which screens, which workflows, and what business processes are used most frequently. Right? And it doesn't require any changes, so your users can use the emulator solutions or however they access the IBMI today. The beauty of this is that process insights will give you objective data, about where modernization efforts will have the greatest impact. So instead of making decisions based on assumptions or personal opinions or gut feelings, you're making them based on actual user behavior on data. So once you have that visibility, you can then prioritize initiatives. So maybe you want to improve the user experience. Maybe you want to automate repetitive workflows. Maybe you want to expose business processes, APIs, support digital transformation initiatives. The data will tell you where to start. And from there, from the process insights, CM-Kit integrates directly with the rest of the Rocket Modernization portfolio. So if automation is your priority, you can move directly from insights into Rocket API, expose that business logic as a reusable service that can be consumed by other applications, right? If user experience is your focus, you can import that heat map directly into Rocket Modern Experience and then identify exactly which screens and workflows should be modernized first based on actual usage patterns. And although, if you look at the flow diagram, it looks like a branch, like you have to choose. Well, you don't have to choose, right? These are not mutually exclusive options. So what we typically see is that customers automate the workflows that don't require human involvement and modernize the workflows that do require human involvement. So if a process can run unattended, can be fully automated, you automate that, or else you do modern experience. And the result of both is a combination of greater efficiency and a significantly improved user experience. So that's great. But I think perhaps the most powerful aspect of this approach is that modernization doesn't become a one-time project. Right? So sometimes you talk to customers, said, well, have you done any modernization initiatives? Yes, we modernized 20 years ago. Great, but that's no longer modern, right? So after deploying these improvements, whether it's going to be modern experience or Rocket API, user workflow improvements or automation, you continue monitoring that user behavior through process insights. So 3 months from now, or 6 months from now, or a year from now, you will immediately see where new bottlenecks, or rather new opportunities, will have emerged, right? And this creates, a cycle, a continuous modernization cycle. That's also why we call it the continuous modernization kit. So you solve today's challenges, you measure the results, and then identify the next area to improve, right? Because if you have tackled, something that takes a lot of effort, a lot of time from with your employees, then that tile on the heat map will not be as dark as it used to be, right? Something else will pop up as the next best thing to modernize. And the outcomes with the CM kit we typically see are very consistent, right? So the customers tell us, hey, our employees become productive more quickly, or training and onboarding times are reduced. We see a drop in errors, right? The errors decreased significantly, right? The error rate went down. Users complete tasks faster. The satisfaction, the user or the employee satisfaction improves, right? So if you are able to automate those mundane tasks, you free up those people to do more high valuable jobs or tasks, right? More interaction with customers, for example. So ultimately, organizations increase the return on investments they've already made in those IBMI applications, right? All those decades of investment, because you prepare them for the future. So I guess my key message is this: the business logic is already there, the value of that application is already there, and
Yep.
CM Kit will help you unlock that value through a structured, data-driven modernization process that delivers those measurable business outcomes. The business is looking for, right? So it's a long answer, Harpreet, but I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, very well explained. And thank you so much, Ron, for that. And I see that there is a modern AI augmented web UI. What is that? What does that mean?
Yeah, it's not just a fancy marketing sentence there. So
Yeah.
what we try to do with those insights, we see how we can optimize an existing process, right? So typically, there are some screens that can be skipped, and we can consolidate the process consisting out of multiple green screens into a single page view, right? So that's the standard workflow optimization. But what we can do then is we can seamlessly integrate AI into that modernized workflow, right? So that allows you to unlock intelligence across your business process. For example, maybe there's data on the green screen, and we have transformed that to a nice modern web UI. But the user needs help, right? So with that data on the green screen, you can ask an AI model to provide context-based document searches. So you can provide specific guidance for that user, that helps with onboarding. We also have seen a use case where that example I just mentioned, right, that people that are inexperienced will make errors in an order entry application by selecting parts that are not compatible. That's where an AI agent can also help, right? It can look at the parts that are being added to an order and then say, hey, I'm just making this up, right? You're adding an Intel processor to an AMD motherboard, and those parts are incompatible, right? So, and it's really hard to build that kind of logic into your green screen application, especially if you have a huge warehouse, right? So, but an AI assistant can do that for you, right? So, and the nice thing is that all of this can be done without making changes, right? So, if I say AI augmented workflows, this would be the same if like adding a Google Maps widget to a modern web UI, or a zip code lookup, or a track and trace integration with FedEx or something like that. Along those similar lines, you can also add AI. So that's what that means in a nutshell.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Aaron. And on the integration and automation, can the automation be exposed as APIs for third-party systems?
Yeah, we do have customers that only use Rocket API from the continuous modernization kit in their solution. This was a customer that is running a ledger application on the IBMI, right? So all the financial transactions had to go in that ledger application. It's a single source of truth. They've been using that for decades. But then, the salespeople decided to use Salesforce alongside of that, right? And then they had a challenge. So they had people entering data into the IBMI ledger application on the I, and also in Salesforce. And then you have the same challenge, right? So mistakes were made, data was not synchronized, record mismatches, and they spent a lot of time and money correcting that every year. So what they did is they created APIs on that ledger application, again, without making any change to the underlying application. And then one of the features that Rocket API offers is the ability to orchestrate APIs. So that what that means is you can add logic to APIs, right, as building blocks. And what they did is they created this set of APIs, as an example, update customer data. And that update customer data, there's only one API you would have to call, but that update customer data would update the data in the IBMI ledger application, and then also in the Salesforce application, right? So, and if something went wrong, it would roll back both changes. So it would do a lot of that heavy lifting, and it saved them a lot of money, and boosted productivity and reduced the error rate there as well. So, yeah, we have customers that automate specifically for the purpose of creating those APIs to well, get the IBMI out of that silo, right, and let it talk to and integrate with other systems in the IT ecosystem.
Yeah, so let's say that there's a workflow that is on the ACE400 side and which is all manual. You go to one part of the system, you do some work, and then you go to another part of the system. So, for example, for order entry itself, you may have multiple workflows, and people don't remember, newcomers don't remember those workflows. They're very easy for the old seasoned people to remember those. They become an expert, they become power users, but then they're again systems working in silos. So this can help in automating this entire workflow automation, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, in general, if you automate something, Harpreet, then you implicitly documenting the steps as well, right? So.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So now the point that is coming to my mind based on the information you provided is a buzzword today is AI. Again, can these APIs be used for AI initiatives as well?
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, the example I gave with Modern Experience with the AI augmented web UI, that's on the
Mhm.
on the front end side of the house. But yeah, absolutely. So we have customers that are looking for a conversational model, right? So they want to implement an AI agent. But yeah, that AI agent does not have the knowledge or the specific domain knowledge they're looking for, right? So if you get an agent say, hey, what is the status of my orders, or how many stock do I have, or it doesn't know that unless you give it access to the domain-specific data. And a while ago, which is an eternity in at the speed AI is progressing in these days, but you used to have retrieval augmented generation. You would have to train the model on that knowledge. But
Mhm.
now with the rise of and the popularity of MCP servers, you don't have to do that anymore, right? So if you have a large language model that is compatible with MCP, then that MCP server, if you expose business logic or data on your IBMI using Rocket API, again without making those any changes to that application, then the MCP server is smart. So if you then say, hey, what is the status of my order? It knows which APIs to invoke, and you can
Yeah.
get that data from your IBMI and add value that way. Yeah, so we see that as well. Yeah, but indeed, AI is front and center with most of those modernization initiatives.
Got it. Got it. Thanks, Ron. And do you have any real use case where MX or modern experience made a significant impact?
Yeah, yeah. This is a real world example. So I just mentioned,
Okay.
a Rocket API use case, with that ledger application on I. This is a customer that has grown through multiple acquisitions, and as you know, every acquisition, brings additional things, not only people and an office, but also systems, processes, and applications. And this company wanted to present a single unified brand to these customers, right? So, say, well, yes, we acquired that, but now it's, like Rocket acquires companies, this is all Rocket. But behind the scenes, their customer service representatives were actually still using the old applications, as they were in place at the companies when they were acquired. So they were juggling multiple applications, multiple logins, and a mix of outdated user interfaces. Right? So you can imagine that they have an emulator session open to that application, and another emulator session to application B, and another emulator session to application C. And they call that the swivel chair problem, right? You're in your chair and you're just swiveling. So you can imagine that created a lot of inefficiencies, right? So those CSRs, those customer service representatives, they spend a lot of time switching between systems, searching for information and navigating complex workflows. And the result of that, that the average call handling times were increasing, right? So people were put on hold while they were trying to find information, about those new products that, the company they acquired. Maybe they had new products that were added to the collection, and they just couldn't find information about those products. So, that customers put on hold. It limited the opportunity for cross-selling because they couldn't find the information or upselling. So ultimately, it impacted both the employee and customer satisfaction, right? Employees were frustrated and customers were frustrated. No, and then the company, additional to that, the company was also facing another challenge that I think many organizations can relate to. So those legacy applications also made it difficult to offer self-service capabilities, right? So customers are increasingly expecting self-service options, right? Typically, calling a customer service rep is, the last option if there's no digital self-service. But yeah, the underlying systems or interface were holding the business back. So how did they solve this? Well, with Rocket Modern Experience, they were able to modernize that user experience without rewriting the underlying business application. So the business logic remained exactly where it was, right, on those different systems. But what changed was the experience presented to both employees and customers. And the results were significant, right? So I think if you look at the third pillar here on the third column on the slide, I mean, the average call handling time was reduced by 50 seconds per call. So that means that's a key metric for a call center. That means that your reps can do more calls in an hour, right? And without any decline in customer satisfaction. So it's not that they were hanging up on those customers. The customers were served well. The training time for new hires dropped by 20%, so that helped the organization get people productive faster, which was very important for them because they work with seasonal workers. So you can imagine around Black Friday, the holiday period, they were ramping up the customer service reps, and then in the new year they were ramping down again. So the training and onboarding is very important for them. And because of that, the employee morale improved because now people were focusing on serving customers, focus on that customer experience instead of fighting with the technology in the background, right? So that also helped reduce the staff turnover, right, the churn. So overall, the productivity increased by 25%, and the customer satisfaction also increased with 25%. So that probably it's more likely they will sell more because customers have a good experience talking to the reps. So I think this is a great example of why modernization is about much more than making applications look prettier, right? It's more than just putting lipstick on a pig. A modern user experience directly impacts onboarding, productivity, employee retention, customer satisfaction, and because of that, ultimately the business results. Right. So, and when you connect this back to the earlier conversation we had, it becomes even more compelling. Right. So, Fabrizio talked about a 7% innovation budget, and then saving half of that 40% HADR budget. And adding that to the innovation budget. So those savings generated through iCluster they don't just reduce cost once, they become an ongoing source of funding that can be reinvested in modernization initiatives like this, right? So creating business value year after year, right? So and like I said, it's continuous, like with the continuous modernization kit, and that's why we call this a self-funded modernization strategy. You're just not just saving money. You're using those savings to continuously improve the experience for both employees and customers, right? And that will affect the bottom line as well. So innovation increases, and it's the gift that keeps on giving.
You can call it as a gift. Yes, absolutely. So strategically, what I'm looking at, though, based on our discussion so far, is that step one is optimizing the HADR, which means that replacing or some components or completely replacing the HADR solution with iCluster. It's a real-time replication. It is not just doesn't take hours to fail over to the disaster recovery system. It happens in seconds, which is a great way to look at it. And then freeing up the budget, lower licenses cost, management overhead is reduced drastically, and you have freed up your uh, expert resources for doing innovation. And then modernizing with CM Kit, transforming the user experience, and you go to a better UI and no application rewrites, which is one of the most important things, and faster and happier users. And one more thing that is coming to my mind is it's just getting your IBM I ready for future for AI.
Yeah, definitely. And what I would like to add there, Harpreet, for when I see faster, happier users. Sometimes you also have users that don't like web interfaces, right? They say, I've
Yeah,
been doing this for 30 years, and if you see them working on the emulator, they can type screens ahead and they know the application by heart. So, or administrators also have that. So because the whole continuous modernization kit is non-invasive, like you said, it doesn't require any changes to the backend application. That means that those experienced green screen users can also continue to use the systems as is, right? So it's not an all or nothing approach. You can serve both populations, right? They can use the interface that they like most, where they will be the most productive. Yeah.
yeah. So the backend system remain where they were, how they were working before, and your power users and your seasoned users can happily type ahead into the green screens.
Yeah.
Right.
So if I were to break down, or you can say summarize what we have discussed in three steps, basically. Step one, optimize your HADR cost with iCluster. Step number two, free up significant budget. And third, and the last but not the least, reinvest that budget into modernization with CMKit.
And that's a powerful outcome, Shake. And um, cost reduction, improved productivity, better user experience, and future-ready IBMI, and your backend system remains intact, and you can continue to use your critical business processes as is.
Yeah, indeed. And I think everyone is looking for these outcomes, right? But I think this strategy will help you break the status quo of keeping the lights on, right? So if this sounds like you, like, yeah, I see, an IT budget that's spent on all these things that are all important, but there's
Yeah,
no time or no budget for innovation, or I don't have time for innovation because I'm doing all these things to keep the lights on. This will help. This will free up the specialists and budget, so you can innovate and then embrace those technologies that everybody's talking about or looking for, like AI, and make sure you can keep competing in your markets, right? Because if you don't modernize, your competition will, right? So you have
yeah,
to keep up. So yeah.
Yeah. So if there is one message that we want you to take away today, it's this: that the modernization does not always require new budget. Instead, sometimes it requires a rather smarter allocation of existing spend. By reducing HA cost, you can fund your own modernization journey. And also, you can request a free proof of concept where we can show you exactly how much budget you can unlock with what your modernized IBMI could look like. And with that said, I'll open the floor for questions, and you can drop in your questions in Q&A chat, which you can see on the top menu, right beside chat. Yeah. So I can already see one question. Yeah, that's an interesting one. So the question is how easy it is to migrate from my existing HADR to iCluster? That's a meaningful question.
Yeah. Shall I take that one, Harpreet? Yeah, that's a logical question, right? I think that's would also be the first question that would come to my mind. Well, the management and setup of iCluster is easy. And fortunately, the migration process from your existing HA solution to iCluster is also very easy and without interruption, right? So there's somebody that will work with you to install the iCluster license program. And then it will leave your current HA application running normally. They will configure iCluster, migrating the configuration, and then just switch to the new solution. So it's really easy to migrate.
I think we have another one. So okay. So the second question is, how much can we realistically save by moving to Rocket iCluster?
I'll take this one as well. So yeah, I think the keyword here is realistically, right? So we set up to 50%. Well, it really depends on the solution you're using today and how that's licensed, right? So what we typically see is that some legacy HADR solutions are priced by LPAR. iCluster on-premise is licensed for the whole box. So if you have lots of LPARs on your box, then you can realize lots of cost savings. But it really depends on your current situation, right? The LPARs you have, your processor group, the model of IBMI you have. So I think what it says here on the slide, the call to action, request a free proof of concept, contact us, and then we'll work with you to determine, how much budget you can free up.
Okay, so we have another question. Is there any iCluster success story you can share in banking area?
Yeah, we have iCluster is really popular in banking, also in other verticals like finance. Well, because those have regulatory compliance, requirements. They need to have that. Manufacturing as well. So there are some case studies on our website on rocketsoftware.com. So you can check out the case studies there. We have some named case studies. We also have anonymous case studies. But it's a really popular solution. So if you reach out to me or Harpreet, then we can provide you more information on those case studies.
So I have already few more questions coming in. So another one is, our AS400 applications have been running reliably for years. Why should we modernize now?
Yeah, I'll take that, Jeroen, if you don't mind.
Okay, I can just remember.
Your IBM IA application will continue to deliver significant business values, and there's no doubt about that. The need for modernization, to me, isn't about the platform is outdated. It is not because it is green screen. It's about addressing evolving business needs, and modern users expect intuitive web and mobile interfaces. Organizations now need APIs to expose the system to other third-party integrations and AI readiness. And many businesses are facing IBM skill shortages with modernization. This CM kit allows you to stabilize that skill gap, and you can move your modifications outside of the green screens without disrupting your backend processing power that is already existing and has been working for the last many decades. So it is also about getting your AS400 or IBM I ready for AI integration and AI enhancements.
I think we have enough time to take few more questions. So how long does an iCluster migration typically take?
Shall I take that one, Harpreet? So,
Sure.
So how long does an iCluster migration typically take? Well, again, it really depends on how you've configured your current HADR solution today, right? It also depends on the size of your environment, right? The number of nodes, the number of replication groups. So a two-node implementation is what we see a lot. A two-node implementation on average would take 7 days, right? Where you spend a few hours a day to basically migrate that existing configuration and other environment HA processes into iCluster. So yeah, let's say a week, but with a little asterisk because depending on your environment.
Okay, so I have one more with me. So that's an interesting one. Can a Rocket I cluster protect multiple IBM I partitions or environment?
Yeah, of course it can. Yeah, you can protect as many. Well, also because of the licensing, right? So you can, if you run on-prem, you can protect all the L parts there. Right? So yeah, it most definitely can. Yeah.
So I think that brings us to the end of our Q&A session. So thank you everyone for your time and participation today. We hope this session has given you practical perspective on how IBM modernization can be self-funded by optimizing your HADR investment. If you would like to explore what this could look like for your own environment, we'd be happy to continue the conversation. I'll now leave our final slide in the on the screen with our contact details, and we are happy to answer any remaining questions. And also, we'll share the presentation and link to the recording in an email. We'll also share the emails for connection on the chat. So, thank you,
Thank you.
everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Abhishek.
Have a
Thank you,
blessed day.
Harpreet.
Thank you. Thank you, Ron. Thank you,
Thanks,
Abhishek.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank you.